The full moon hung in the air of the night and a small breeze entered the fray. Howard Cornelius was parking his tractor into the barn when he saw a shooting star. He seemed quite impressed by it. Never seen one in decades since he was small, and headed off into the house. His wife Vera was washing up in the kitchen and said the kids have gone to bed. Howard kissed her cheek and sat down at the table. Vera had laid down some cooked food ready for him to eat. The kids meanwhile were looking out of their windows. They saw the shooting star and ecstatic by it. Then they saw another one, but this one had a small trail of fire behind it and it landed over a hill nearby. When it landed it made a booming sound that both Howard and Vera heard. Howard raced out the door along the sheepdog path and armed himself with a double-barreled shotgun. He walked down the pathway and into the night. He thought to himself, have the Russians have start dropping bombs and beginning a war. As he got nearer to the hill, Garth started to bark and run off to the hillside. Howard whistled and tried to call him back. Then he heard a squeaky howl in the darkness. He kept calling Garth back. He did return, but Howard noticed something had happened to him. He kneeled down and inspected him. He was shocked. Something had shredded the left side of Garth's face off, exposing its jaw, but the eye was left intact, and then Howard saw some glowing eyes in some bushes. He quickly picked up Garth and raced back to the farmhouse. When he burst down the door of the farmhouse and told Vera, she quickly went to get some bandages to cover Garth's half-exposed face. The kids came downstairs and the daughter Polly screamed at the sight of Garth's injury. Howard told her to calm down. The dog got attacked by some kind of animal near the hillside. The son Bernie mentioned a shooting star with flames in its trail and said it could be aliens from outer space. Vera scoffed this nonsense and said Garth must have found a badger. Howard wrapped the bandages around Garth's face and head. Vera looked at his handiwork, said the dog looks ridiculous and like it was wearing a baby bonnet. Howard said to her, how can you cover a wound on a dog's face, and this is the result. Vera told the kids to go back to bed and both of them did. Bernie was still thinking that it is aliens, but no one would believe him. Howard put his shotgun on the table and wondered if there were actually aliens at that hillside. Those glowing eyes didn't belong to an animal of any sorts. The TARDIS lands on the side of a road. Louisa steps out and looked around. She called the doctor saying they've landed in the wrong place again. He steps out and surveys the area. He says the TARDIS took a skip in the vortex. She said she hoping to go see Elvis Presley during his Vegas years and they've ended up in some farmland in who knows where. The doctor put a finger in his mouth and pointed up in the air. Hopkinsville, Kentucky, 1955. She turned back to him. The era of rock and roll, and wondered if there's a place with it happening. The doctor said they'll go and have a look. As they walked some meters away from the TARDIS, Louisa notices a man lying in a bush. She calls the doctor over and both observe it. The doctor knelt down and saw what seemed to be its remains. Judging by the appearance, seems to be a vagrant and must have been slashed by something with claws. Louisa looked at the ripped corpse and wondered if this creature is still lurking in the night. The doctor thought of that as well and decided to head up the farm. He could see the farmhouse and some lights were sporadically going around the place. He decided they should go up and see if anyone there knows about the vagrant's death. When they reached the front door, the doctor knocked on it and then it opened. A double-barreled shotgun popped out and was pointed at his face. The doctor put his hands up and introduced himself and Louisa. Howard asks them why they are here. The doctor mentions the dead vagrant opposite the entrance of their driveway, and then Howard tells them to go in. Once they entered the farmhouse, the doctor takes notice of the bandaged sheepdog, kneels down and inspects it. Howard explains what happened to Garth and the doctor tries to figure out the attacks are linked. Howard then asks him what kind of doctor is. The doctor gave a multitude of answers, seemingly to be man with multiple but different degrees. Suddenly Bernie and Polly screamed and raced downstairs. They saw some gray creature scratching at the window. The doctor and Howard headed upstairs to Polly's room. Howard held his shotgun and prepared to shoot the creature. Both men looked in surprise at a gray-skinned goblin creature with glowing yellow eyes scratching its claws at the window, and Howard pointed the shotgun at the window. The doctor ordered him to put it down, but Howard refused and fired a shot. Glass shattered and the goblin creature scampered away. The doctor, fumed by this, shouted at Howard. He wanted to inspect it, not kill it, and then Howard turned to him. He began saying that he isn't a doctor at all and started to point the shotgun at him. Then Vera let out a scream and Louisa shouted for the doctor. Both men came down. The sheepdog Garth had started to foam at the mouth and its eyes were glowing yellow. Howard pointed the shotgun at Garth and shot it. Vera, the kids and Louisa were in shock by the bang. Polly became tearful that she had to witness their sheepdog getting put down. Howard claims the dog had rabies, but the doctor found something else and it was coming its exposed side of the face. He removed the bandages and out slithered out grayish maggots. The doctor said it seems to be a form of parasite. When the dog got attacked by those goblins, what was on them seems have entered the wound, and by the look of the eye seemed in a sort of mind control, linked to the goblins. Louisa asked about the vagrant. The doctor tensed up and wondered if that dead man was in the same position as the dog. Suddenly the vagrant appeared at the front door, foaming from the mouth, glowing eyes, and was walking like a zombie. Vera and the kids panicked, thinking they'll get bitten. Howard pointed the shotgun at the vagrant and shot it in the chest. He gave a sigh of relief and watched as more the gray-like maggots emerged out of its body. The doctor and Howard later dispose the corpses of both Garth and the vagrant. He tells Howard to show him the hillside where Garth came into contact with the goblins. He takes the doctor to the hillside and looked through some of the bushes. There he finds a white saucer-type pod. It was covered in burn marks and the hatch was opened. He looked inside. It was small and then noticed cracked opened tubes. Seemingly these goblins were part of an experiment, and when the pod impacted they broke free. They must have been test tube born and when started grow when being released. Howard tried following this until his attention was cut off when the goblins emerged. He started shouting at them and killed them one by one. The doctor looked at the massacre and stood silent. Howard asks him if there were any more. He replied with doubt and headed back to the farmhouse. Louisa was waiting for him outside the house and said to her that the goblins have been dealt with but not in his hand. He turned to Howard walking to the house. Howard thanked him with a handshake and said to him that he needs to leave his property. He doesn't need anyone else around the farm, especially his mother-in-law. The doctor agreed and him and Louisa set off down the road. When they approached the TARDIS, Louisa questioned him about the ones buried in front of the house. The doctor said they'll never be found even when new owners take it on in the pod. The government might do something with it. Area 51, all that, and the speculations of UFO sightings will run rapid. They may never know.